In the next two slides, we'll discuss in slightly more detail why DTFT, the convolution in time, is multiplication in the frequency domain. So if you have x of n sending into LTI system, and the LTI system is characterized by the impulse response h of n, then y of n equals to x of n convolved with h of n. So what we typically do is that we convert x of n by the discrete time Fourier transform into x of omega, both for the input x of n as well as the impulse response. And we can then just simply multiply this x of omega and h of omega to y of omega. Y of omega is the discrete time Fourier transform of y of n. If we only have y of omega and we want to get y of n, it's of course simply nothing but inverse discrete time Fourier transform. We do all this because convolution here is very expensive. It's big O times the length of the sequence square. And here is big O n log n. So this is much smaller computationally than this guy. Alright. What are the conditions? Of course, the signal of interest must be, it must exist. What must exist? This guy must exist. I mean, not all signals can be Fourier transformed. So we say that only when x of omega, h of omega exists, then we can do this. And what else? H of omega must be people stable for it to exist. Okay, so existence is required to convert from x of n to x of omega, h of n to h of omega. What else? Alright, let's prove. Y is the Fourier transform of this guy. This is y of n is equals to the multiplication of x of omega to h of omega. First, remember the convolution equation. This is the discrete time convolution equation. Y of n is xn convolved with hn is specified by this equation here. Xk multiplied by the delayed impulse response. This is the convolution or in discrete time. Alright, now what about y? Well, let's call this y of n, and we can of course perform DTFT, and this is the equation. Y of n e minus j omega n. So we already know what y of n is. Y of n is this equation here. So we put this equation over here. And this is still the discrete time Fourier transform. What we then do is that we interchange the order of the summation. And we now put the k outside. We sum the n inside. So over here, we are simply, it looks like we are only performing the Fourier transform of a delayed version of h of n. Remember that when we perform a delayed version, then we have the h of omega and multiplied by e minus j omega k, the delayed version, a delayed version of h of n, when we do Fourier transform, will give rise to h of omega, the delayed version of Fourier transform of h of omega multiplied by e minus j omega k. So this is what's happening here. We then break this equation considering m at one side and e minus j omega k at the other side. And then we bring e minus j omega k to be associated with this. And this on the left looks like x of omega, and this on the right looks like h of omega. And therefore now it is simply x of omega multiplied by h of omega. So this is the proof that we want to show that y of n in the time domain that is a convolution becomes multiplication in the frequency domain.